Hi friends, and welcome to my channel, and I must apologise straight off the bat for the lighting. It's so dark outside. It's the longest night tonight. It's solstice. It's the 21st, so today and tomorrow, and let's celebrate the return of the sun because I feel so happy to welcome the sun back. And I know we probably won't see it for a little while, you know, we won't be aware of it, but it's coming and that's good enough for me. I don't know about anybody else, but I do actually suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder, always have. It's hard this time of year when there's so little light. And that actually does neatly segue my way into today's video, because it's all about the Ten of Wands. It's about restrictions, trying to work within those restrictions. It's connected to the world and the Temperance card, and it has a very profound effect on the energy of this card. So let's start by looking at the planets associated with these two cards here. So we've got Jupiter and we've got Saturn. Now Saturn is all about restrictions, and Jupiter is all about expansions. So we can see straight away that this poor guy here, which is a Sagittarian decan, is struggling against these two influences that really don't agree with each other. They're very much in opposition to each other, and you can see here that it is causing problems. So we associate the Ten of Wands with burdens, being overburdened, taking on too much and not being able to manage it, which we can clearly see here. This guy here has absolutely taken on too much. He's probably going to get back problems and trying to carry it all, and he's trying to get to this town. Whether for the town's good or the town's bad is up for debate, but nevertheless that's his mission. But he's lost focus because he actually cannot see beyond those wands there. It's illustrated here in the Thoth because these two here, these two Dorjes, I think that's how you pronounce it, these two things here, are restricting the fire element. They're actually forming a barrier. You might even say they're imprisoned behind it. So if you look at that Two of Wands, it's dominion, so being dominated, and it's obvious here with oppression that these wands are being dominated by these two Dorjes. We already looked at Temperance when I did the last decan, so I won't labour over that too much. We know that it's ruled by Jupiter. We also know that it doesn't like being limited, Jupiter, and Sagittarian is a freedom-loving sign. So if you look at that from a psychological point of view, these are barriers to growth. Poor Sagittarius just can't go anywhere. It can't grow, can't develop. It's just totally stuck. Communication is blocked, and when communication is blocked, then that can lead to fear, can't it? You know, we're fearing rejection, we're fearing not being understood, we're fearing disapproval. So we try to do as much as we can here. It's trying to please too many people because it fears actually being rejected, really. And that can really lead to depression. Obviously, being this time of year, seasonal affective disorder can lead to depression. You can see really how they tie in there. Temperance here is trying to bring two opposites together to make one whole. As I said, I discussed all this really in the last video of this series, so if you're interested, go back there. I talk about the rainbow and the way the elements have changed and transformed into the rainbow. So the Ten of Wands, like I said, it's about suffocation, feeling obliged, being ruled by force, and risking burnout. You know, wands are all about fire, so too many wands is burnout, isn't it? Should we have a look at a few cards from other decks? So in the New Era Elements Tarot, which is this deck here, Then the Ten of Wands is depicted as a cheetah, I think, caged. So this really does show the influence of the world on Sagittarian free spirit, Jupiter free spirit, caged, contained. And we know that animals in captivity, like this, like in zoos, they do suffer from depression and their health does deteriorate. It's a known fact. So I think that's a brilliant depiction of the Ten of Wands. So that actually shows the domination factor of the Two of Wands, doesn't it? That put wild animal caged. In Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampires, sorry about the glare, which we're going to get here. So in Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampires, we have our figure here, Sagittarian glyph on the back there, and we've got the Saturn glyph there on a mask. And we've got fire here, but it's very contained. It's not, it's not flaring too far. We've got fire on the end of the wand here. But this person's been through it. They've escaped from these brambles here. You can see the scratch marks on the back there. And they're not having a great time of it. But they're trying to escape from the brambles, the enclosure, the things that's holding them down and keeping them fixed when they just want to expand. So they're doing the absolute best here. There's even scratches on the arms there where they've forced themselves free from those restrictions. So I think that's a great depiction of the energy. So here in the Liberty Tarot, which is this one, Tarot of Stars Eternal, our Ten of Wands here is an authority figure keeping the little people down and enclosed. So we've got the same sort of imagery here, but here we can actually see the authority figure that's actually suppressing them and holding them down. So that's authority. And yes, we all must follow rules, but these are those that have been taken to the extreme, and they're no good for anybody, really. They're not serving a real purpose anymore. Rules and regulations are important, but when they're too dominant, then they cause problems, don't they? So that's a really good depiction of that energy there in Liberty. The final deck I want to actually talk about is the amazing Tarot Avatara by Gabby Angus West. So you may or may not be aware of this deck, but it's all about Frida Kahlo, if that's how you pronounce her name, who was an amazing artist in Mexico. And the guidebook is written as if it's the diary of Frida, although it isn't, and it's stated quite obviously it's not. It's a beautiful deck. And so let's find the entry for the Ten of Wands, which is oppression in this deck. So I'll let you look at the card while I read the entry. Some will laugh at me, others will cry for my plight. Many will understand through the lives they have lived that sometimes it's all too much. There is my home, my art life, my public image, my fight for Mexico, but most of all, my health, my pain, which chooses never to abate despite the inconvenience of its constant presence. On top of all this is, of course, my Diego. That's her husband. I carry this man and all that he is. If the strain begins to show on my face, if I am short-tempered and quick to rage, 'tis 'cause it all is too much. But just what can I allow to drop? Only myself, if I shelve all that is mine and all that is for me, putting away my desires for another day. Perhaps I can hold on. But then, what if I begin to fade? My true self becoming weak and invisible. Everything will follow me to the floor. Diego, wake up and shoulder some of the strain. So the meanings here are taking on too much, feeling put upon, a huge workload, problems bringing you to breaking point, lack of realizations of personal limits or boundaries. Beautiful, beautiful deck. So that's my takeaway really on the Ten of Wands. It's a difficult card. I think all three cards have been a bit difficult, haven't they? And it explains my mindsets when faced with restrictions. Be they restrictions of the time of year, be they restrictions from authority that you can't fight against because they're too powerful, be they restrictions put on us by partners, by any other people and any other circumstances that actually put restrictions on me as a Sagittarian is a real problem, or has been. And my lesson has been to work within those restrictions, and that's my takeaway really from all of this. That's the way life is. You can fight against it as much as you like, but that's the way life is. So it's probably best to try and just work within those limitations. And much like Frida here, produced so much amazing work despite restrictions of health. I mean, I don't know if you know her story, but health was a real problem for her. She had an accident. She was born with polio, and then she actually was involved in an accident when she was very young and ended up having to be bedbound and painted from her bed. And her relationship with her husband was a bit of a rocky one, although she loved him dearly. And her life was full of difficulties and restrictions. But despite those restrictions, she produced and was an amazing artist, and she never did give up, I think she was just amazing. And that's the advice really from this card. It's growth from psychological barriers, because it's not what happens to us, is it? It's how we respond to what happens to us, and that's our power. That's the power we hold, is the way we respond to what life throws at us. And if we want a positive affirmation for this card, then we have the right to follow our feelings. We have the right to follow our impulses. That's for our health. Instead of allowing these boundaries to produce fears of rejection, fears of disapproval, that can just lead us to feeling so repressed, and then leading in itself to a horrible depression that can then lead on to a horrible illness. And Saturn is such a hard taskmaster. He's inflexible. But it's up to us really to be persistent. Commit to a healing path, be that psychological, physical. It's growth through pain. It's growth through wounds and fears into healing. I don't say any of this flippantly. I do say this from experience, and it's not something I'm going to divulge, but I have had very serious health issues throughout my life. Very serious, life-threatening and life-changing illnesses. And so this card speaks to me of the restrictions that have been placed on me all my life because of those, and because of dealing with authority around those issues, and also dealing with personal relationships around those issues. And so, none of this is flippant. This is very heartfelt, and obviously it's my opinion, and yours will be your opinion, because, as I've said before, we're all unique. I am Sunique because I am unique, and so are you. And your take on all this may be completely different. And I welcome that. I absolutely welcome that. So shall we have a little look at the crystals? Let's lighten the mood a bit. Okay, so I'm using the Crystal Magic Tarot still. I've decided to stick with that deck because I like the way it interprets these cards and the crystals that they associate with them. So we have Temperance as lepidolite, we have the 10 of Wands is aquamarine and the world is turquoise. So I've got my little healing crystal bag. Let's put that to one side. And here we've got aquamarine, lepidolite and turquoise. Beautiful, beautiful crystals. The light's catching them, hopefully. Must apologise for those seagulls. Oh dear. Okay, so one of my favourite authors, as you might know from the other videos, is Michael Geiger. So let's see what Michael Geiger has to say about aquamarine and how that relates to the 10 of Wands for us. One thing I really like about this book are the illustrations. Look at that. See if I can... Isn't that absolutely beautiful? The photography in this book is amazing. So, aquamarine encourages spiritual growth, foresight, farsightedness, mediumistic qualities and clairvoyance. It makes us upright and honest, goal-orientated, dynamic, persistent and successful. So, I think the takeaway there is with the 10 of Wands, we need to be persistent and not let authority grind us down to a halt where we can't move. Emotionally, it bestows light-heartedness and a happy, relaxed disposition that is due to all things undertaken, developing quickly and smoothly. Mentally, aquamarine clears up confusion and stimulates orderliness, bringing unfinished business to a conclusion. So that could be seen as a positive trait of Saturn. In confining us, it's actually helping us to achieve things by being contained, really. When you take on a project and it's all very new at the beginning and it's all very exciting, then it's easy to to have fire and energy and enthusiasm for it. But by the time we get to the 10, maybe we're feeling like it's all a bit too much or we don't really want to carry on. But 9s are the final push, aren't they? So 10s are, we've got to get it done. And in order to get something done, our project, if that's maybe writing a book or, whatever that project is, then we need the rigidness, we need Saturn's energy, really, for us to complete, even though it feels like a burden. And so, because Jupiter and Sagittarius don't like being held down, sometimes it's necessary. So that's really interesting. And what else can I take away from those crystals? Well, so discipline is really required in those sort of situations, because we'll never get anything done without discipline, will we? We need to persevere, and that's a form of wisdom. So that's the wisdom we can take away from the 10 of Wands in a positive way. We've got to be inflexible in order to achieve the goals that we want to. We can't say, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, or yeah, I'll do it next week, because as we all know, that never happens. Aquamarine is a very soothing stone. It's usually used on the throat chakra. So it can help to calm us when we're in these sort of situations that we feel like we want to rail against. I think the soothing energy of aquamarine can help us to flow with it and actually achieve something. And that's really my sort of takeaway on all of this. And that's what's going to help me move forward through this energy and benefit from it, really. Because, focusing on the negative aspects of being contained is not going to get us anywhere, is it? It's not going to be helpful at all. It's just going to lead, as I said, to depression and possibly even illness. And that's not something that should be encouraged. Here we've got a mermaid and she's swimming within those waters. She's not, all these wands here could be barriers to her swimming effortlessly. They actually are in the way. But this cooling energy of aquamarine can actually help with the flow. It has got a very watery feel, which is obviously linked to the emotions. So how we emotionally connect to what's happening is very, very important. So anyway, that's a very personal, obviously, viewpoint on this decan. I hope it's of value to somebody. It's obviously been of value to me. It's helped me to navigate the difficult waters of Saturn and find a positive way to actually come to terms with the energy. So until the next time, which is hopefully going to be a little bit more cheerful, I apologise for this because it does seem quite a Debbie Downer. But yeah, I think they're all valuable lessons, aren't they, on our journey? It's not all lightness and joy. You know, it's like temperance, it's the light and the dark, isn't it? And that's very apparent with these cards because we have, as I said, repressive Saturn, expansive Jupiter, and we need to balance those two energies in order to achieve what we want to achieve in this life. You know, we've got to take on responsibility to a certain degree. We can't always go flitting off and do what we want to do. Yeah, so it really is a call out, isn't it? And so on that note, having been called out, I hope the light wasn't too distracting. I've done as much as I can to try and shine a light on this, both with actual lights and also with my thoughts on these cards. So, you know, with this balance here, let's leave this more balanced than we arrived. Oh, okay, I hope you enjoyed this video anyway. It seems a bit heavy, and I apologise if it is, but this is just my personal workings with these cards, and yeah, a lesson that we learned. Yeah, a lesson that I've taken on and will grow from. So until the next time, solstice blessings to everybody, and bye.